Round the Twist was an Australian children's television series that gained a cult following due to its absurd storylines, irreverent humour and a catchy theme song. But why is it still considered so iconic even now, and how well does it stand up today? Join me as I return to fictional seaside town Port Noranda and climb that lighthouse once more metaphorically and explore the strange, the stupid and the just plain twisted. In Australia in the late 80s, Australian school children all over Australia were captivated by the short stories of Paul Jennings. Some of these were silly, some of them were spooky, but all of them featured strange things happening to regular people, usually capped off with an unexpected ending or twist. Before long, the Australian Children's Television Foundation sought to make these stories the basis of a television series, first airing in 1989 with Jennings himself as writer. You know, I wasn't even alive when the first series of Round the Twist was broadcast, but in primary school these were always the episodes that were handy on a VHS tape to play during like a wet day timetable or during free time, and there's something so distinctive about them. The images in them have stayed with me for years. I think there's always something dreamlike or surreal about watching old childhood shows on videotape, and it's only enhanced in this case by the bizarre nature of the stories. I want to know if that's just nostalgia-tinted lenses, or is there really something special about Round the Twist that's made it stay with me for so long? The show follows the Twist family, which, if you're clever, you'll notice makes for an amusing play on words in the show's title, who have moved from the big city to the seaside town of Port Noranda. Along with widowed Tony, there's teenage twins Pete and Linda, and Bronson, the other one.
Can't hold on much longer!
The episodes typically follow the Twist children encountering something strange or supernatural in and around their lighthouse home and working together to overcome the mystery, for some reason never losing their minds in the process after discovering several ghosts and, in one episode, an actual dragon. It would have been tempting for the writers to have the show feature a typically no-nonsense generic nuclear family to really emphasize the weird things that are going on, but I think it's more interesting to have the family a little bit weird to begin with. Tony, for example, is a sculptor and rummages through the tip to find crap he can turn into objectively shoddy political or social statements.
Oh.
7,000?
Sugars.
Do they sell for that?
Sugar's in the kitchen. No.
I think Linda's the most interesting character to follow. Judo practicing and outspoken on social issues, she still comes across as funny and unpretentious. We also get to see cracks in her fierce persona, which only make her more endearing, going as far as to clone herself to win a date with her high school crush. She's portrayed flawlessly by Tasman West, who also sings the theme song, and has an accent more Australian than Dame Edna drinking a VB on an illegal offshore detention centre.
Where'd you get your face? Panel beater?
Oh. Pete as a character is not as clearly defined. I guess he's best described as just a teenage boy, and a lot of his motivation comes from him trying to win the affection of Linda's friend Fiona by means of magic lipstick and participation in spaghetti eating contests. Sometimes he's goofy and the class clown, but sometimes he's just a dick, like when he taunts Linda for wearing makeup to the point where she nearly dies, and tells Bronson there's no such thing as Santa Claus.
You mean the real Santa's a fake?
You shouldn't have done that.
Pete, mate, you saw a dragon in the second episode. If it turns out Santa Claus is real, it's like the third most interesting thing to happen to you all week. For his part, Bronson does well. Too often live-action comedy is let down by obnoxious little child actors that are forced to act wise beyond their years, but Rodney McLennan fortunately doesn't overdo it, and Bronson is a good, imaginative, immature foil to his older and more cynical siblings. We're also introduced to wise old Nell, who has lived by the lighthouse all her life and knows its secrets. Nell acts as something of a mediator between the twists and the strange things they encounter, usually with an explanation that comes a little too late to be of any help.
Young Ned. Those guys have got strange powers.
It upsets the balance of nature. You can't make something from nothing.
Why not mention some of this stuff earlier? Wouldn't it have been wiser to warn children about the machine in their house that manipulates the laws of nature rather than waiting for one of them to discover it? Regardless, I really like Nell's gruff, no-nonsense demeanour. She reminds me of my grandmother, except you never see her drunk in any of the episodes. Beside the haunted happenings, the twists have to contend with the Gribbles. Mr. Gribble is the real estate agent that sold the lighthouse to Tony and then spends the entire series trying to sell it again to foreign investors.
It's a bit of a pity because, like, just between you and me, keep it quiet, but there's been a bit of interest in this place over the years and probably could stitch up a pretty good deal,
Yeah, no kidding. You just sold it to him. If you wanted to sell it to a foreign investor, why didn't you sell it to them in the first place? For a cunning businessman, that's a really appalling blunder. Mr. Gribble conspires throughout the series to sell the lighthouse to various national stereotypes, while his son has it in for the twist by virtue of them being from the city and him being an arsehole, and schemes against them with the help of his two cronies, Rabbit, large and dopey template henchman, and Tiger, small and obnoxious template henchman.
The girls are going wild! Looks like he's gonna do it, Gribs. A magnificent mound of amphibious muscle.
Fuck him!
Yeah, go fuck him.
I also think Mr. Gribble's wife, Matron, is perfectly cast. Judith McGrath reminds me of a vice principal I had once, and all her gestures and expressions give a perfect portrait of a fussy and snobby mother-in-law type.
Not me, you silly boy.
We get to watch storylines that carry throughout the series. Pete and Linda both have their romantic interests, one of which resolves convincingly, the other presumably left to continue ad infinitum. Tony as well has the hots for Mrs. James, one of the children's school teachers, though his efforts to woo her are usually hindered as he is caught up with whatever mystical bullshit is happening that week. Furthermore, the strange things that happen are preceded every episode with sad music coming from an empty room in the lighthouse, the source of which our heroes don't identify until the final episode. Apparently, the Australian Children's Television Foundation had a lot of difficulty finding a distributor, given some of the risque content of the show. It's difficult to imagine a children's show today getting away with the same gross-out elements, but it certainly helped build a cult following. In the first series, we have ghosts haunting toilets, spaghetti being vomited, gratuitous teenage nudity, and also there's this clip of Gribble Jr. impersonating the greatest mass murderer in history. According to Round the Twist, the book, that kid's name was Lachlan Jeffries, and he found the auditions quite daunting. That information's not very interesting, but it'll be a waste of $6 if I didn't utilise this book somehow. It does, however, have some pretty emotional moments that can outweigh the silliness of the episodes. In the copy, Linda is forced to say goodbye to her perfect duplicate, knowing he has all the emotions and memories she has. It's essentially Linda dying on screen. But even that takes second place to the Cabbage Patch fib. Bronson finds a green baby in the Cabbage Patch, as per the old reproductive metaphor, and quickly finds out that the baby will hold its breath or cry if anybody but him attempts to look after it. In the spirit of a show in which people casually accept absurd realities, everyone now expects Bronson to raise the child essentially single-handedly.
You can't just run out on it. You have to learn to live up to the responsibilities
But Dad, I have to take Erin with me.
Looking after children is hard work.
Yeah, great fucking advice, Dad. Were you 9 when you had your first kid? The pressure on Bronson mounts to a powerful climax where he returns the child to the Cabbage Patch and sobs silently while his older siblings tearfully implore him not to let the actual baby die in front of them. The baby pulls through when its parents arrive in a giant cabbage-shaped spaceship, only just saving us from watching lovable Bronson commit infanticide on children's television.
Bronson, you think?
Oh, Bronson. He loves food and murdering his child. While the happenings are often spooky, the intention isn't really to scare or leave the viewers frightened, as it is with the Goosebumps television series. Rarely are the supernatural forces as malicious as the human antagonists. Ghosts are often revealed to be harmless and the bad guys get their just desserts. It is, after all, aimed at children, so there's nothing really in there to traumatize. Except for that one episode. But that couldn't be scary. Not after all these years. Not now. Oh Jesus, not now. Noel features a trunk of old circus clothes that wash up on the beach. The family puts them on because they're blissfully unaware of how prevalent syphilis was at the turn of the century. I suppose it's meant to give them the corresponding talents of the circus performers, but we really only see Tony getting some sort of psychic inhibition and Pete being able to balance on a fence. Freaky. They also put a clown costume on a scarecrow, because apparently neither of those things are scary enough by themselves, which naturally gives the scarecrow the clown's personality. As Nell explains, too late to be helpful, the clown had an unrequited love for the lady clown. And guess who's wearing the lady clown costume? What follows are selected but unedited clips from a television program aimed at children. Well, that, objectively, is terrifying. I remember watching this episode on a bus on excursion in primary school, and the kid next to me wouldn't even look at the screen. I thought he was weak at the time, but in hindsight, he was strong enough to know that some demons can't be exorcised. Oh, Jesus. Many attribute the quirky nature of the show to Jennings, who of course wrote the original stories and their televised adaptations. But sometimes the original stories don't fit the new format. Take, for example, the episode Santa Claus. It is revealed in a flashback that Pete helps out a grizzled old man who insists he's one of a series of genuine Santa Clauses and is obligated to give all the members of the Twist family 2 wishes each. Why 2 wishes? Why every family member? Who knows? The only wish that has any bearing on the plot is Linda figuratively wishing that Pete didn't have such a big mouth, leaving him with a tiny and, admittedly, pretty impressively constructed by the prosthetics department mouth, for which he is bullied mercilessly. But then it turns out none of that actually happened, and it was all a dream. Or was it? In a show that features a ghost seagull revealing lost treasure and an actual dragon in the same episode, you don't need to pull out the old, it was all just a dream or was it shtick. The Gum Leaf War is another story that suffers from adaptation. When Linda suffers a botched nose reconstruction, she exiled herself to live in the Victorian high country with her Aunt Tuneless, who I guess is not Nell. Aunt Tuneless is engaged in a long-running war with her neighbour Foxy, who I guess is not Mr. Gribble. You see, there's an old gum tree with magic leaves. Whenever somebody plays a tune on one of them, whoever hears it receives one of the physical ailments suffered by the person playing. It's such a bizarre concept, but I think it's brilliant. Everything from the squashed nose to the difference of setting to the musical leaves make the episode seem like some beautiful and strange dream. It's just a shame that the whole thing actually turns out to be a dream. Or was it? Yeah, that again. It's a standard television trope to have a dream episode where the main character enters a strange environment and all the supporting characters are the same but slightly different. But in this episode, the Twist family appears as themselves, so what's going on? The series finale sees Gribble finally succeed in selling the lighthouse due to an ill-defined and very convenient legal loophole that allows the ominous and possibly German Mr. Henderson to build an amusement park. The only hope for the family is the ghosts that have been playing the music throughout the series. It turns out the lighthouse is still inhabited by the spirits of Nell's family that died in a shipwreck long ago, but they'll only help out if the Twist family reaches out to them through the magic of song.
And I will hear a soft new tread above me, and on my grave, all my sweeter.
A plot resolution that involves the power of song to save a lighthouse from evil developers is, I'm sure you'll agree, pretty lame and totally unfitting for a show that almost had the main characters drown in bird crap in an earlier episode. We get an explanation for the music that's been playing, but it's so anticlimactic. We also get Gribble putting aside his differences to help Tony defend the lighthouse. And it's treated like an endearing character transformation, but we know it's only because the investors want to demolish the lighthouse, and Gribble knows the town will hate him for it. He was perfectly happy to throw the kids out in the rafters when it was good for business. The whole plot is so paint by numbers, and it's a disappointing way to end the series. Still, we get an emotional performance from Nell, who gets to see her lost family one last time. Series finale aside, does the show stand up today? I think it really does. The supernatural elements mean the focus isn't on awkward teenage social drama, and while we do get an insight into the characters' personalities, it's never at the cost of the real fun. And while some of the acting is wooden at sometimes...
Look, you idiot. You're never going to have any trouble getting kisses.
Most of the lead cast play off each other really well, and it comes off very lighthearted and very funny. Things that were strange in 1989 are still strange today. So the storylines never appear dated, and while there are undeniably some special effects that do not hold up in 2017, most of them do. It's far from state-of-the-art stuff, but that adds to the charm of the series without taking the viewing away from the story. It adds to the general feel of the show. I think that's what Round the Twist really has going for it. Unique stories complemented by a really unique tone. It doesn't try to copy anything else, and it doesn't forget its Australian roots. It's somehow extremely Australian and effortlessly Australian, and that's something that you really can't replicate. It's this tone that has given the show such a cult following. You know, it's almost 30 years since the first series aired, but people still remember Round the Twist. They remember the theme song, or the opening shot of the lighthouse, or a fragment of an episode that stuck with them. I don't think that's incidental. Season 1 combines the right blend of absurdity and down-to-earth Aussie humour for a great watch. Of the 13 episodes, I highly recommend A Good Tip for Ghosts, Spaghetti Pig Out, the aforementioned nightmare-inducing Know-All, and Without My Pants. Having said that, there are no bad episodes, and even the ones I mentioned that are disappointed with still have enough going to keep you entertained. For reasons unknown, by which I mean I couldn't find the answer on Wikipedia, the second season of Round the Twist wouldn't be broadcast until 1992, with most of the major characters recast. How does that compare? I guess we'll never know. Except we will know, because I'll be reviewing that next time. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and remember, if it ain't twisted, get fisted.
I put my meatballs in the hole. I put my meatballs